right, hi. It's a big honor for me, and our good news. We're talking to Ross Beaty. Hi, Ross. How are you?
I'm well, thank you.
Ross, your name came up when we were talking about our Earth Day event that we did on April 22nd through one of the people who was a good friend of yours, Scott Hicks, and he said the man you should be speaking with is you about environmental issues because you're very successful in renewable energy industries, and you've made a big impact in what's that, BC, British Columbia, and around the world. In addition to silver mining and really working with we like to promote this little photo here, Mother Earth from the moon. No borders, no boundaries. We're all in it together, kind of thing. And then, in addition to doing that, you took a little movement, it seems to me, to maybe take it another level to an environmental outreach in what you're already doing and passionately. Created some organizations, some nonprofit groups, and we thank you for that because you could just be working on silver and not dealing with the other things. Am I making any sense?
Yeah. Keep going.
Well, why don't you tell us about, first of all, how did you get started? You're somewhere, you know about the Earth, right? You studied something about it. How did this happen for you?
Well, ever since I was little, I always liked being outside. I just loved fresh air. I don't know what it was, but I always played outside and liked to hike and then to ski and kayak and canoe and everything. And so I wanted a job that took me outside, and I became a geologist. And that was a job that I gravitated to because it meant that I would get paid to climb mountains and fly around in helicopters and camp and be dirty all the time. And it was great. And I then gravitated towards the sort of commercial side of that business, looking for mines, mineral exploration. Didn't really matter if we found something or not. It was a great deal of fun looking. But eventually I kind of got into a company and then another one, and I found I was an entrepreneur, and I had a certain amount of gift for the gab. I could sell shares and get money, and then I could put money into drilling holes. And we actually found a couple of mines, and then one thing led to another, and it's been a very satisfying career. In the world, literally global. I've worked in 40 or 50 countries in the world. And then in 2008, I wanted to do something green. I've always had an environmental bent right from the get-go. I've always loved nature and wanted to protect it more, in spite of the fact that I was in a mining industry, which is somewhat extractive and destructive. It's not as bad as it sounds. Typically, a mine can be reclaimed pretty well. It's a short-term impact on Earth and is then reclaimed, unlike cities and roads and things that tend to be very permanent. But in 2008, I wanted to do something different, and I wanted to build something green that was also in the business world of resource development. And so I started a geothermal power company. That went from geothermal power into wind power, solar power, and hydropower, which are the four classic clean energy forms or renewable energy forms that are green, and built a pretty big company out of that. And I was very happy to do that. That took about 12 years to really work out well, but it's now a very, very large company called Interjex Renewable Energy, based in Montreal. And then I guess after, I don't know, 5 or 10 years ago, I had made a lot of money, and I decided I'd do something more concrete with the money, and I'd create an environmental philanthropy called the Sitka Foundation, and set it up to basically support people doing environmental good things in Canada mainly, some across the world, some in the US, but mostly in Canada. And so that's grown to be a very large 100% environmental philanthropy called the Sitka Foundation. And that's something that I'm active on, as well as being on the board of a number of environmental nonprofits. I'm the chair of the BC Parks Foundation, a member of the Pacific Salmon Foundation, the Worldwide Wild Cat Conservation Society called Panthera, which is based in New York, and so on, a bunch of other things. So I'm doing a whole bunch of stuff, more environmental than not. I'm giving more money away now than making it. And it's just that end of my life, but it's all centered about a love of nature, a love of the outdoors, and the realization that if we don't look out for nature, there's no point in looking at it for humans, because we have really a big problem with continuing existence in the world unless we look out for our environment a little bit better.
You know, we start our, and thank you, we applaud you for this endeavors and this hard work that you do, because once again, not everybody, one, is doing it. Two, not everybody sees the vision and the need, and maybe didn't hear that the last couple of days were the hottest ever in the history of the world.
Yeah.
And so and maybe those kinds of big numbers are an island somewhere going down, and everybody maybe having to learn how to swim is maybe a little bit more in our face than it possibly has ever been, wouldn't you say? I mean,
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with that. I mean, these two big problems we're facing in the world are both kind of invisible. One is global warming caused by carbon pollution. It's well established now. It's not a theory; it's a fact, and it's going to get worse unless we do something about it. And the other is the loss of biodiversity. We're losing species at a great rate. Some we can see, like the passenger pigeon, but some we cannot see, like insects and birds and things like that, that are making our world a more difficult one for humans to live in, because it's all of other aspects of nature that creates healthy water and healthy air and good soil and good food and all that sort of stuff. And if we don't have a healthy ecosystem, humans have a big problem. So we've got these two big issues. Fortunately, a lot of people understand that we have these issues, and they're doing a lot of things about them. Creating more parks is one way to do it. Trying to stop carbon pollution is another way. But there's a lot of things people can do individually, and if we all kind of row the boat in the right direction, we're going to make big change, and we're not going to have these difficult times like we're seeing in many places of the world today, where we have these crazy heat spills, crazy hurricanes, crazy weird weather, high insurance premiums, rising sea levels that I see because I live on the water here in Vancouver, and I see the sea level rising all the time and having more extreme events. We've just got to do something. Every single person has it in their capacity to do something about it. And if we all do our own little thing, the problem's going to be solved.
Well, that's been our mission for a long time. In fact, we start off it's actually called Pause the World for Peace, and Pause the World for Peace and Ecology.
Exactly the same.
And the UN did declare a day for the International Day of Peace, and asked at 12 noon that the whole world takes a moment. I think, with this little cell phone kind of thing here, a lot of people seem to have it, and it's all about. I think you had that guy called Marshall McLuhan. He's a local boy, did good. Talking about the message, it's in being in communications all these years. It's the united message. We're all in it together. It's not a country deal, because if you're polluting one spot, you're polluting the world. So we start off with Dr. Jane Goodall, who I'm sure you know of, and she says, if we don't take care of Mother Earth, basically, we can't have peace.
Yeah, that's actually where I come from as well. A lot of people say, well, we've got a lot of social inequality around, and we do, and that's a big problem. We have to deal with that. But quite frankly, if we don't look after our environment, all the social equality in the world isn't going to help us when there's climate refugees, people trying to get away from extreme situations where they have no food. And talk about peace. Well, I'll tell you, the best way to have wars and have transnational boundary conflicts is to have one nation in a healthier kind of climatological area than another. And so we've just got to deal with the environment as one of the key things we work on, as well as other things like social justice and like peace. I mean, those are all big picture things that humans can do a lot to solve.
With some of the organizations you're involved in, and we'll talk again. Well, this is a hello. We're just meeting each other. What are some of the things that your nonprofits are actually doing that you're feeling good about?
Yeah, well, there's one thing that I am working on quite actively, which is trying to protect 30% of British Columbia by 2030. This means more parks, just to make it simple. Places where species can be by themselves, they can be healthy, and if they're healthy in that big of an area, and if we can go global on this, 30% of the world by 2030, if we can go global on this, we're going to have a lot better chance of protecting our biodiversity. And then we can do it with the 70% that humans can do their thing on within certain rules, but knowing that we still have this big area that's going to be left more or less to nature to do its thing. And so, you know, I could do this in Botswana or Borneo or Bolivia, but I choose to do it in British Columbia because it's my home. And BC has the largest biodiversity in actually in North America. We have the most big mammals in Canada, the most varied ecosystems. It's all about mountains and valleys, and BC is just full of those. It's a huge province. It's the size of California, Oregon, and Washington put together, and then some. So it's a huge province. And so I'm going to say, well, if I can work on protecting 30% of BC by 2030, that's a thing worth doing. And I'm doing that right now very actively in conjunction with the provincial government, the federal government, and a lot of these First Nations. We have the Indigenous peoples of British Columbia who all want this as well. So it's an achievable thing, and it's my little box right now that I'm working hard on, and I feel it's going to be, quite frankly, my greatest legacy.
There you go. Well, it's a big box. The little box is a big box. I learned in Trivia Pursuit, this game that was created by a couple Canadians, that Canada has the most amount of land on water in the world. That's one of these Trivial Pursuit questions. Canada, we like Canada, okay? Don't listen to Seth MacFarlane and South Park and all those shows, you know, causing your country trouble. You know, you have a...
we don't care.
That's
We're comfortable.
Hey, we don't care.
We don't care.
You got a great attitude. Well, let me ask a couple, what is it for you then, Ross? And congratulations once again. And we'll talk again if that's okay. We could get more specific. What's peace for you? Since we do these Peace Day events, actually it's in Times Square, there's a park. And it's called Father Duffy Square, and it's a city-run park. I live next to the parks. I love the park scenario. I'm a Boy Scout, and then when you're a Boy Scout and you grow up in the digging a latrine, you learn something about a park. What is peace for you, Ross?
Well, peace is an ability for humans to coexist in harmony. That's what peace is. It doesn't matter whether you're green or black or purple or of one religion or another or one ethnic creed or another. It's the ability to live and tolerate your neighbor. It's pretty simple.
Okay, all right. It's a simple statement and a big act in certain times. But the good news, I'll just say, I don't usually say it much after someone says something, is that most of the world lives in peace, thank the Lord. And thank God, because and that's the story that we should focus on. There's some mentally ill people out there. I don't want to get the heavy here, and we need to help them. But most of the world's at peace. But it's a hard story to almost people to believe. I don't know why.
Well, it's a crazy thing. If you look at human history, you know, you do have every so often the male, it's always a male, who's aggressive and assertive and is trying to conquer his neighbors, and it's just like that. It's that sort of brain comes out now and then, and unfortunately, those kind of people tend to be leaders, and they tend to gather around them people who can be swayed into that way of thinking for reasons of greed or suspicion or envy or whatever, and they rally around them, and if they're strong enough, they go on the attack. And we've seen that recently in Ukraine with you could say, a mentally ill man in St. Petersburg or Moscow, and doing these things, and he's dragging a lot of terribly unfortunate people along with him, and he's causing mayhem and chaos without any logical reason. And that's the world we live in. That's why we actually need defense spending, unfortunately, because there are people like that around. And thank heavens, by the way, thank heavens for the USA and its focus on defense and military spending, because, you know, it's a deterrent to people like that, and it's being actively used right now. Thank heavens.
There you go, Ross. Thanks so much for taking some time to talk with us. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Okay.